Many a times I get asked, what do you like? What are some of the things that you like? And I can watch a really good interview or even a mildly good interview because I love interaction back and forth between people that I find amusing, or in this case, what I'm about to plug. I had no idea how interesting in a short amount of time two people whose interaction would make me watch, and that's the key thing. So I I watched Dan Rather, and he's doing these shows now where he interviews various people. And I know Dan Rather's got a lot of history behind him. He interviews Dan Ackroyd here, and it's about 10 minutes long, and it is so compelling, so good, so interesting in my book. And I think those of you that'll watch, you'll understand. And I was beginning to talk about Dan Rather, who frankly, after his news anchor career, became befuddled with, political stereotypes and orientation and all that, which I get there'd be a drawback to that, but I, I've never been put off unless it's really, really gross or extreme. People's political situations, their aspirations, their beliefs, that's all well and good. I can separate. I really can't. And I don't think Rather was that left. I don't want to turn this broadcast into a pro and con Dan Rather. He does an interview here with, of all people, Dan Ackroyd, who doesn't do a lot of interviews. And it's about 10 minutes long. And they center on John Belushi. And I was a big, big Saturday Night Live fan growing up. And I knew Belushi was incredibly funny and original and talented. And I, unfortunately, in the back of my mind, I knew that there was going to be some really, really tragic sort of conclusion with John Belushi because I knew, and you knew, if you read a lot and if you discovered a lot about some of his vices, that would ultimately take him to his demise. That was always on my mind. So when it was announced that he died and he had a drug overdose and all that, I was saddened, but I, in the back of my mind, said to myself, I knew this was coming. And Ackroyd, I didn't realize how much of a toll that it took on Ackroyd, which is evident here. And I also didn't know that it not only did it took a while for him to get back, but that he had a lot of situations where, he speaks here about his relationship with John Belushi and all that. But more importantly, that this interview provides a real good, solid back and forth. And as I said, good interviews are not very common these days. You have to kind of search far, and especially in our local media, there's nothing like this. Nationally, it's one of the things I miss about, Mike Wallace. And Mike Wallace did a totally different kind of an interview. It was more confrontational. Even at that, he was very powerful, very revealing. He got many of the subject matters to basically unwittingly bear their ill will and all that. Of all people, and this is not such a surprise, but one of the things I liked about Barbara Walters is that she could do really good interviews, mostly celebrity and all that. I get all that, but nevertheless, enjoyed it, especially after the Academy Awards. She'd have that show, and it was sort of revealing. I like this and I'm going to post the link, and I hope you watch it. It's 9 minutes and 57 seconds long, 10 minutes. And I think you'll really enjoy it. And amazingly, in my book, Ackroyd was simply one of the best, the Ghostbusters. People forget about that. And Trading Places. And, he was a director himself. in some other films. But talk about the glue that, stuck together with Saturday Night Live. And he talks about Lorne Michaels here, and he's one of the remaining few left, him and Bill Murray and Garrett Morris. And of course, Belushi died, but Lorraine Newman and Chevy Chase, they had the big 50-year reunion a couple of weeks ago. But in my book, Dan Ackroyd and he was, of course, an alum of Second City, and one of those great Canadian comedic actors and directors. And amazingly, in my book, looks pretty damn good here, and really, I have praise for Dan Rather, who asks good questions, and you get to see some really funny impressions of all people, President Jimmy Carter and President Nixon, which Rather does a great job of doing Nixon. I'm trying, and you get these every now and then, but I'm really appreciative of this, and I do like certain things, and has the right amount of time, the right amount of intrigue, a little bit of revelation, and you get this. And I wholeheartedly endorse this interview of all people. Talk about two unlikely duos here, Dan Ackroyd and the great Dan Rather from CBS News, and way back a correspondent in Vietnam. So watch.